The thing is, if you want to be successful, you need to be strict. Otherwise, other people make misuse of you. So do things in your life that makes your life easier so that you can focus on the stuff that's important. If you've got 30 minutes somewhere available, use it to write, or use it to plan, or use it to just find a few articles.
Many researchers and PhD students work 50 to 60 hours a week. That's 10 to 12 hours, 5 days a week, or 8 hours every single day, including Sundays and all holidays. Well, no wonder research shows that 47% of researchers and PhD students report feeling constant stress. So what if there was a different way that allowed you to both publish more and actually work less? My guest today, Lisette Britz, she's published 3 papers in the last year, has 4 more papers under review, and is working on 4 more papers. Yet, she never takes work home. She doesn't work weekends. She feels at ease, happy, and relaxed. But she's a pediatric surgeon. She's a mother, a university professor, a PhD student, a triathlete. So how does she do it all without working 60 hours a week or feeling stressed? Well, in this episode of The Published Researcher, Lisette will show you how you can accomplish all of this, publish more, and work less. You will learn simple but insanely powerful productivity hacks for researchers and PhD students. And her number 1 secret to publishing more papers while actually working less. Before this episode starts, I wanted to ask you a little favor. Did you know that 83.7% of all of you who watch or listen to these podcasts at a regular basis do not subscribe? So if you've enjoyed one of these episodes, please hit the subscribe button. It actually helps more than you think, because the bigger this channel gets, the bigger the guests that we invite get, and the bigger and better the tips for publishing papers also get. So you'll help yourself, everybody else watching, and this channel by hitting the subscribe button. So without further ado, my name is Marek Kiczkowiak, and this is the Published Researcher podcast. Enjoy today's episode. The first question I like to always ask on this podcast, since it's the Published Researcher podcast, is how does one become a published researcher and publish papers? So you published 1 at the end of last year, 2 more this year. You've got 4 more papers under review, and then you're busy working on 4 more papers. So you've got already a few published papers and a lot more coming. So how does that happen? How does one become a published researcher?
Thanks for having me on your podcast, Marek. I think I started in a panic, needing to write papers because that's expected from me in my job, and because I'm also a lecturer at our university. So, and I also need to train undergraduate and postgraduate students, and we need to supervise some research. So what happened is I was a junior consultant having to do all these things, and I had no clue how to even supervise a research paper, not even doing one. I had 1 paper published, but that was also as a student. And suddenly I need to lead someone in a field or in something I have no experience in. So it happened that I had a few studies already done, but we haven't written it up yet because I just don't know how to do it. And one day I just sat at my computer and realized I now need to start writing up these papers because the data is becoming old and I'm going to lose the opportunity. And that's how I Googled how to write a certain section of a paper. And that's where I came across some of your YouTube videos. And I had an interview with you guys, and you guys recognized what my problem is, which is actually the whole process of writing a paper. And I joined your business in that sense, Academic English Now, which now changed to Published Researcher. But how it initially happened is that I had multiple research done already, no paper written. So I had a backlog of papers that need to be written, and that's how it ended up having quite a few publications close together. But those papers have been written now and is under review. And in between those old research I did, I also got new ideas, which I also wrote papers on. And I started my PhD because one idea started developing in another idea and a follow-up study and a follow-up study. And that's how I recognized, but this is actually a PhD. And that's how I've decided to change that into a PhD. So, and the more you get into research and the more you read and the more you read different things and hear from other fields, you suddenly start recognizing research gaps. So that's how I got so many new topics and new things that I'm also writing about. So, that's how it all happened. And that's in a time span of 2 years.
So it sounds like, you had a backlog of ideas, but then you did very well to sort of create like a pipeline of more topics so that
yes,
you don't run up dry after all that data that you had. You've written it up, and then next you would be in a state of panic again, right? Because you don't have any more topics. But you seem to have done very well to, in between those papers, to also develop more.
Yes, as I went along, I discovered more topics. And if I get an idea, I immediately write it down. I've got a little booklet where I just write research ideas. And then once you've written it down, you start pondering about it just in your subconscious mind, and things start to develop. And I also like to read quite broad. I've got in health and nutrition and personal growth and all those type of things. And the moment you get input from other disciplines, other people that's also an academic topic or in an academic situation, you start developing ideas how you can correlate your life and your work with them, like getting novel ideas. And that's where some new research comes forth that's not been researched before. And that's how I get some more ideas. And that's some of my research gaps that I've got for future research is like that. Combining different disciplines, basically, because of just the knowledge that I gained from my other reading for pleasure. And somehow they're interlinked. So there is another idea. And I've had so many questions and there aren't answers for them. So someone needs to then provide those answers. And that's how some of my other research ideas came forth. Unanswered questions.
Can you maybe give an example of that? Because I think, it's maybe a bit of an unorthodox idea that you're saying you're reading also for pleasure and, you're reading other disciplines or maybe still in medicine, but, outside of your specialism. So can you maybe give an example of like one idea that you got for one new paper without maybe giving away too many details if you don't want to, but just like so it becomes a little bit more tangible for anybody listening to.
So I'm a pediatric surgeon. That's my day job. And I like to read on sports and nutrition, especially nutrition, healthy living, authentic living, healthy eating. And so came from my reading and listening podcasts and videos and things on nutrition. And where I realized that there's a big lack in new novel research on nutrition, and it's not being applied in my work life. And that's where a lot of my ideas came together. How can we, for one of my studies is on veganism or whole food plant-based eating. How does that influence the health, growth and development of children? And and there's very limited data on that. And I did a scoping review and I recognized what's all the limitations in the literature. There are not good recommendations. Recommendations are different for different people are giving different the recommendations. There's a big lack of research on the topic. So that's example one of my papers, and the one I'm currently writing on is also about nutrition. Patients that are babies that get cow's milk allergies, cow's milk protein allergies, and then they develop with a disease that I treat. But we actually have a lot of failures in our treatment because we are treating children for reflux, but they actually have a cow's milk allergy, and the two has overlapping symptoms. So in our population setting with HIV, it's different to just change a baby that's on breast milk to formula or to mix feed them. So we tend to go more the medication way of treating this, but actually we are missing a big overlapping symptomatology where one disease mimics the other disease, and we can't get to treat them properly because we are feeding the children incorrectly. So that's another paper that came forth, and that ideas and things came from my other readings. And the other ideas that I also have is also from the microbiome and your gut flora and all those things, and how that actually influences surgical illnesses that I treat, infections that children get, and so forth. So that's the literature that I've read outside of my work that inspired me to do research in my work.
Would you say that's, if you could give one key lesson about publishing papers, either to your younger self who maybe just started out in academia, or, others that are just starting out on the first or second paper, would that be it? Would that be the main lesson, to read wildly outside of your own narrow specialism to get novel ideas, or something else?
I think that would be a big factor, but not necessarily. You can still publish within the field and not necessarily having to merge some of the fields. I think a big lesson that I was very stressed in the beginning because I'm not knowledgeable. I don't know how to do this. Time is going by so quickly. People are publishing and I'm doing nothing. And as you read a lot, and then suddenly you've published, and then there's 10 more papers that came out in the meantime that you haven't even referenced, or things are happening too quickly. And I think that made me anxious in the beginning. But what I realized is this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Just keep a steady pace, slow, steady pace, and you'll eventually get there. But trying to do everything at once and thinking that you should have all the knowledge in the beginning, it's not possible. You grow as you publish more. You learn from each publication. You learn so much for your next publication and your next publication. Like, for instance, I've enrolled in my PhD, but I'm still doing lots of other papers in between, because you wait so long in between for things to happen, waiting for feedback from your supervisors, waiting for ethics, waiting for results from biostats. There's always some waiting going on. And in between, I keep doing other papers. And as I go along doing all these other things with my PhD, I learn a lot. So in the end, my papers in my PhD improves because I've learned lessons from other papers to apply them in my PhD papers. And if I only learned the lessons from my PhD papers, I wouldn't have had this much knowledge by now. And I would have made those mistakes in my PhD papers, which I'm very grateful I made them in my other papers and learned from them. And the more you send papers for review, the more you learn from reviewers. So I was always initially, when you get feedback from a reviewer, you think, my goodness, I'm the baddest person on earth. I can't even write a paper. Everything you've worked on so diligently and put everything you have into it. Now it's been torn apart by someone you don't even know. And I used to take that very badly on myself. And I soon learned that's just feedback. Just use it positively, learn from it, it will make your paper even better. And if you get rejected from one journal, use that feedback to improve on your paper, to send it to your next journal, see if you get better feedback. And that's been a bit of a game for me, trying to improve my paper to such a way like when the last journal can't reject it at all because it's now perfect. So yeah, no, that's one thing. Learn from feedback. Don't take it personally. Use it as a stepping stone to have a better paper and to improve your research skills and writing skills.
I guess my question is, I don't know if others listening to it have the same thought now, but you're doing a PhD, you're doing papers for your PhD, but you've got lots of other papers as well in the pipeline. You're a pediatric surgeon. I know you run triathlons as well. And I'm assuming you don't work 100 hours a week. So how on earth do you manage to do all that? I suppose that's $1 million question, because maybe, people doing a PhD or, researchers are thinking, yeah, I would love to do what you're doing, but how is that even possible to be able to do your PhD papers, do other stuff, read outside of your discipline, be a pediatric surgeon who's constantly on calls and has to operate, and then have a life outside of that? How does that work, please, if you can walk us through it?
So this didn't happen overnight. I made lots of mistakes along the way of burnout, not having a balanced, integrated life, just working day and night, not exercising, not sleeping enough. And I made all the mistakes in the book. And I just came one day, I realized this can't continue forever. I need to set boundaries for myself. And I must say, I've only started managing this work-life balance the last 2 to 3 years. Before that, let's say since the last 6 years, I've actually managed this, where I've stopped doing work in the private sector. So I've lost a lot of income, but I've got more of a life. So I work at the university, I work in the government sector in the hospital, and I used to do private sector work. So I've stopped that completely. So I'm just a government employee and a lecturer at the university now. I had to put that boundary for myself and adapt to a smaller income. Then I've started to exercise. Exercise has so much positives. It makes you sleep better. It makes you concentrate better. It makes you be able to be more creative in your work. So exercise. Second thing is I changed the way I was eating to eat healthy. At the moment, I'm just eating a whole food plant-based diet, and it's made a tremendous difference in my life. Secondly, I don't do anything that anybody else can do. If someone else can do it, I'm not doing it. My first answer for everything is no. No, thank you. No, no. Don't. So people just stop asking me things, because my answer is always no. And if I think I might do it, I will say I'll think about it. So it's no, or I'll think about it. And then it's probably no. So I think that's a big boundary. And the second thing is I'm very diligent in not doing any work, any research work, any lecturing work, anything at home. I work at work and I'm at home when I'm at home. I don't bring any work home. I used to do that, and that was a big problem because you don't know where to stop. So when wherever I am, I'm present. Because if you're at home and your child needs your attention and you're trying to do other stuff, you are not successful in any of those two situations. So when I get home, my time is spent with my child and my wife, and that's it. We do family things. And when I'm at work, I don't take on any extra job that is not absolutely necessary. And when I'm at work, I'm very, very time-wise. I try to do my writing at the time of the day when I'm the best. And that's first things in the morning. When I get to work, by that very first 2 hours, I try to do my writing, and I don't answer any emails, any social media stuff. I just write. And after that, I can take a break, and then I'll go and do my rounds and, all those things, because I'm a consultant, and there are people underneath me that actually does the on the floor work. So I train the trainees. So I can schedule my time a bit better so that I have that 2 best hours of the day. I can try and schedule that for myself. So it's not always possible. You do get phone calls and you have to answer and sort out things, but I try to do that before I start my writing. And that's when I'm the most productive, and that's when I'm the most creative. And I do creative thinking, writing then. Other donkey work, like just getting your paper draft ready, things that's not taking too much creativity, that I will do when I'm not that fresh. So that's basically, and I think
there's so much here as well to unpack.
Yeah.
We said a lot of very, very interesting things. Like, for example, what you said about sleep, nutrition, exercise. These are like 3 basic things that so many of us overlook, and for me as well, my life changed completely when I started going to bed roughly at the same hour, getting up at the same hour, more or less, getting my 8 to 9 hours of sleep, eating healthily, not constantly eating out. It's like really small things, but I think a lot of us don't realize how big of an impact they will have on your life and by extension on your productivity as a researcher. I think we constantly think about this kind of optimizing mode. How can I write more? How, like these hacks for writing or productivity, but actually probably 80 or 90% of it is really just like sleep well, eat well, and exercise, isn't it? That really gives you a lot of energy.
Absolutely. If I was on call and I had a bad night's sleep, my productivity the next morning and my creativity is not nearly as good as when I had a good night's sleep. But being diligent, very diligent with your exercise, sleep, and eating. It's very, very important. Friends, no, you don't WhatsApp me or send me a message or anything after 8:30 in the evening. I will not answer it until tomorrow because I'm in bed. So don't even try. If I'm not on call, I won't answer. So people know I've set those boundaries for not just for myself, but for everyone. Don't phone me after that. Don't call me. Don't even ask. Yeah. So that's how I get my 8 to 9 hours
It's interesting
sleep every
because
night.
I think it was on Monday or last Friday, emailed everybody at Academic English Now, and I said, I'm going to answer emails only between 3 and 4 p.m. Costa Rica time, and that's it. If something happens, well, there are these other people you can contact, but I'm not answering any emails because I found that I was just I was being very reactive, and I reached a point where it was just like too much. And I sent that email as well to just let everybody know and keep me accountable, because I suppose if they now see me answering emails at a different time, I'm breaking a promise that I made not only to myself, but to everybody else. And but a question I suppose is, just to play the devil's advocate, how do you say no to people if, there are things that have to be done, or you feel like you have to do them as a PhD student? Maybe as a PhD student, you have less power than you do as a researcher. But then as a researcher, there's constantly people as well asking you to do things. So how do you politely say no to them to set those boundaries?
So just in my situation, I'm a part-time student, not a full-time PhD student. So, and I'm not a PhD student in the typical way you would think other PhD students are on campus. Like your senior asking you stuff to do. It's not like that. So I don't have those challenges. I've got my supervisors and it's me. I'm not like in a laboratory or in a PhD post. I'm just a part-time student. I'm not filling a post as a student and doing, now I'm a postdoc, now I'm in a certain scene in a certain way. It's different. It's not like typical how you will experience PhD students at the campus. It's not the same. I think it's because we are halfway in that university, halfway working for the government, so it's not that typical. So no, being a PhD student, people don't ask me to do things. But in general, if we are in our consultant meeting and they ask, can someone organize the hearing function? I'm definitely not going to volunteer. And I don't volunteer for anything. If someone don't ask me directly to do something and I can't figure out a plan for someone else or something else to happen, I just say no. Full stop. No. No is a full sentence. You don't need to give a reason. And
how come you said yes to this podcast? We feel even more privileged to have you on that now that I know that you say no to everything else.
I think doing this podcast, I feel I can give back from the people I've learned from. And doing this podcast and doing this is a way for myself to uplift myself and give myself better way to express myself, I think. So there's definitely benefit for it. There's benefit for me as well. So it's not, the thing is, if you want to be successful, you need to be strict. Otherwise, other people will make misuse of you. And if you can't say no for one, how are you going to say no for the next one and for the next one? And then they say, but you said yes for that one and that one, but why can't you say? So it's becoming a bad situation for yourself. So it sounds harsh and it sounds terrible and it sounds like I must be the most terrible person. But because I have boundaries, people know where they stand with me. So they are also in the clear. They know what's happening. So they don't even bother. And then they also don't have the need for it. Just leave it. If it's not something that's very important, why do it? And I think it's also important not to waste your mental energy on things that is not important. Like, I also live a minimalistic lifestyle. You only have so many good decisions that you can make per day. And if you waste those good decisions that you can make per day, let's say you've got 1,000 good decisions and you've wasted many of them on what are you going to wear today? Just wear the same clothes every day. For instance, don't waste time on things that you can do automatically. Like what you're going to eat for breakfast, what are you going to wear to work, what are you going to have for lunch. Have the same things. Then you don't waste your good decision-making ability on things that needs to happen every day. Do meal prepping. So you don't need to decide what you're going to eat tonight. You're going to eat meal prep. You have 5 different things that you've cooked beforehand and froze. You just take it out in the morning for dinner tonight and you don't need to worry about dinner. You just heat it up in the microwave. So things in your life that makes your life easier so that you can focus on the stuff that's important. And that's a big thing for me as well. The less you have, the less you can worry about. The more things you accumulate, the more it stresses you out. So that's, and one other thing is, don't waste your mental energy with, what can I say? Wasting your mental energy on listening to the news every 3 times a day, or to stand in the corridor being involved in the gossip of work. Use your time efficiently. If you've got 30 minutes somewhere available, use it to write, or use it to plan, or use it to just find a few articles. But be productive every hour of your working day. Then you don't need to do anything at home. Then you don't need to do work through the night, or use your vacation to write papers. It sounds, if I'm an expert at this, I'm not. It's been trial and error, and making mistakes and learning from your own rules that you break. And just keep to your own rules and stick with it and trust the process, and you'll see the results. But it's really, I've been struggling, it's been difficult, but it's become a routine for me, and that's easier now. And you want to procrastinate, you don't want to write, but if you write on the time you're the best, it's easy. But don't ask me to write in the afternoon. There's no way. There's no way.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
And that's when you try write to do it, you get dismotivated. So don't ask me to write in the afternoon, because I will not write in the afternoon, and it will be the most horrible thing ever to do. But if I write in the morning from 8 to 10, it's easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's also about finding that right time for you when you can stay focused and be creative. And, it's designing your life for not just productivity, but I think ultimately happiness, because,
Yes.
it might sound boring, a couple of things that you said, like, wear the same clothes. Don't waste your mental energy on what you're going to eat in the morning. So have the same breakfast. People might be thinking, well, that's really boring. I want to decide on the day what I'm going to have.
No.
Is that a decision worth having, to be honest? It's so much better to have a life where you're productive at work and you're producing valuable research that you are proud of, that helps other people. And then when you go home, you're 100% present with your family. You can do your hobbies. When you go on holidays, you go on holidays and you disconnect. And really, if you want to do that, I think everything that you said matters so much. First, try to eliminate things that you don't have to do. And then try to minimize other things that cannot be eliminated. And then try to automate or delegate other things. I have the same thing for breakfast every single day. Yeah. And I don't wear the same clothes to work, but I have a system. I basically just scroll through the shirts that I have, and the one that's on the left, that's the one that I put. And then the new ones go to the right. So that I don't think about it anymore. And if you look at the most successful people in the world, like Steve Jobs, just look at his videos. He always wears the same jeans and the same black sweater. That's it. That's the only thing that he has, probably. Yeah. Right. But I want to move away from, the discussion of productivity, publishing papers. Talk about the research that you've done, because, it's that type of research that I think is really impacting a lot of lives and children's lives. And, it's that sort of research that I think a lot of us perhaps aspire to do, to be able to, to have a real impact with our research. And one thing that you mentioned was veganism, and you said you're a vegan yourself, or vegetarian.
Vegan. Actually, all food plant-based, because vegans will eat junk vegan food as well. So I try to stay away from the junk food. Yeah.
Got it. So maybe if you can give us that distinction, and I'm interested to know what's the impact of that sort of diet on children, because in my mind, and I know nothing about research on nutrition really, but in my layman's mind, I kind of think that it's good to eat a little bit of everything. But I would love to know, I have a small child as well, what is the impact of such a plant-based diet on the development of children?
So basically, the reason why it's not that well adopted by everybody is because it needs meticulous planning to get in a growing child enough energy and important vitamins and minerals in. So, but it is possible for a child to grow normal without any deficiencies. But unfortunately, the research is very much focused on deficiencies that children may suffer when they are not eating a well-planned diet. So what I've discovered through my research is that some important nutritional bodies will advise, yes, it is possible, but you need to plan well and have a certain vitamins and things that you have to add to your diet because, for instance, vitamin B12, we have to add that to our diet in pill form or with fortified foods for reasons being that vitamin B12 comes from bacteria. It's actually made, your body can't make it. It comes from bacteria, from the soil and water. But because we are living so healthily these days, everything gets washed properly. Those bacteria is not there anymore, so they can't produce that vitamin B12. Our water gets chlorinated, so we don't get cholera anymore, but we also lose the bacteria that creates the vitamin B12 in your body. So because of our healthy lifestyles these days, we have to get extra. For instance, iron, and you need to eat a lot of green leafy vegetables, add vitamin C rich foods to increase the iron absorption, and people just don't eat enough of those. But what we know is that eating a whole food, plant-based diet, or just, let's just say vegan diet, with devoid of any animal products, has lots of health benefits. Type 2 diabetes, hypertension, atherosclerosis, strokes, and myocardial infarctions being the leading cause of death in first world countries, especially. All those things, lots of certain types of cancer, breast cancer, colon cancer, autoimmune diseases, all those things are very minimal on our whole food plant-based diet. And that's why I wanted to see how can this actually be beneficial in children. But yes, it is beneficial, but it needs to be planned, and you need to follow them up well so that they can actually benefit from all the positives. But you need to have a proper diet, properly planned diet to get all the nutrients in. Ovarians, you must eat the rainbow, all the colors, different fruits, different vegetables, different whole grains, different legumes to get everything in. But it's not that easy in a child. Childs, they are fussy eaters. Just to get them to eat is sometimes a struggle. So yes, they are, unfortunately, the research is full of all the negatives. But that's one thing that I found is we must focus on the positives, and we must be able to have guidelines available so that we can actually guide and follow up and look after those that want to follow such a diet. So there are many research gaps that still needs to be explored in the field of veganism in children. But
is that connected to your other paper where you talked about the need for feeding protocols?
Yes.
How is that, or what feeding protocols there need to be, and in more kind of layman's terms, like, well, what sort of feeding advice, evidence-based feeding advice is there for young babies or for young children?
So my knowledge on these feeding is, okay. So the new study I'm doing is on the cow's milk protein allergy that causes reflux in infants. And that is definitely correlated to the mother that breastfeeds the baby, that takes cow's milk in her diet, and the baby, a normal person, human, is not able to actually digest lactose. We don't have the ability. So some shows more intolerance than others. But actually a human being is not supposed to drink milk from a cow. But so we get allergies and we get symptoms from that. Sometimes they reflux, others get skin allergies, others terrible eczema. So there are different ways they can present. They can have bloody stools and all those things. So that research came from my reading on diets and everything. But the other study that I did was on and then we have to change the baby's diets, and we need to adhere to the right protocols to actually treat the patients correctly, addressing their diets, eliminating cow's milk proteins in order for the reflux to end. And we've been not very diligent in that. So that's why I say we must adhere to the protocols and change the protocols to our environment that we work in. And that's my plan with that study. But the other study I did was on necrotizing enterocolitis, which is a gastrointestinal condition in premature babies that affect them in the very early stages of their life, in the first few weeks, where you get inflammation and bacterial overgrowth of the intestines, and then you get the blood supply goes, the bowel wall becomes dead, necrotic, and it can perforate, and the baby can die because of that. But that has to do with the timing of feed. So when a premature baby, especially those under the weight of 1,500 grams, they've got a poor immune system, they've got a poor gut barrier, they've got a very delicate blood supply to their intestines. And now when we give them a blood transfusion, it increases the viscosity of the blood, and it decreases, because the blood is now thick, it decreases the blood supply to the intestines. And that causes this whole process of inflammation, bacterial overgrowth, and all those things. It enhances it. And now, if you feed the baby while you're giving them the blood transfusion, you increase the demand of the gut. So, because the intestines must now digest the food, you increase the intestine's demand for blood, and now you are giving this viscose blood, which struggles to get through the tiny blood vessels that goes to the intestine of these premature tiny babies. And because their immune system are low, they have a low gut, in an immature gut barrier, you advance this disease that can develop. So that's what my other research was about, to anemia, low blood counts in these babies, so that you can limit the transfusions and to be less liberal with the transfusions, rather transfuse them in very more dire situations than just thinking of they might need it. They must really deserve their transfusion, and also stop their feeds while they are being transfused. But how? Oh, and if they can have breast milk is the best. If they have formula feed, that can also enhance the illness. So that was what my other research was about. But how the nutrition, the veganism and those, how that influences necrotizing enterocolitis, I can't say for now. I don't know. But that's definitely the area to explore.
And I mean, until reading those papers, I wasn't aware of these terrible problems, issues, conditions. How widespread are they? And does it depend on the region of the world you're in, or they're just widespread around the world? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So it's all over the world, but it's more common in countries where there are more premature babies. So one would think where the antenatal care is not good or so, there might be more premature babies. Not necessarily. In high-income countries where more babies actually survive that are born prematurely, they will have more NEC because they have more premature babies. So it's all over the world, but high-income countries see a lot of them. But the neonatal care plays a big role, and the preventative strategies plays a big role in trying to prevent these illnesses. But it's unfortunately, because of the prematurity, the immune deficiency, and very limited treatment options, except keeping them without any feeds and giving them antibiotics. And if the bowel is dead, operating them and removing those dead bowel, there's not much else that one can do. Yeah, about 10% of these babies, NEC causes death in these babies.
10%. That's
high,
a huge figure. Do you see any potential advances happening to reduce that mortality? Are there any research areas or, things that could be done to reduce that mortality?
So one of the research areas is the transfusion of blood products in these babies that I've mentioned just now, and also stopping their feeds while transfusing them. Some other research that's going on is looking at the microbiome of these babies, whether probiotics and those things help. It doesn't seem to be the case as good. It doesn't seem to be as advantageous as we would like. But there are many different research going on in this field. And over the last 30 years or so, we haven't gotten any further. Despite lots of research going on, we're still the same where we've been 30 years ago. So at the moment, the answer is no. We are trying.
Why is that though? Do you, because it sounds to me, it then sounds a little bit futile. Do you think we are in that research area? You've just reached, I suppose, the end where maybe until major breakthrough, a major groundbreaking technology happens, nothing else can be done? Or is it that, you've been looking at the wrong things for the 30 years and there is a potential in a new area that just hasn't been explored for some reason? What is the reason that for 30 years you haven't been able to find a cure or a better treatment?
I think most of the research is on preventative strategies because the babies still remain prim and immature. And that's the basis of the illness. And that's what we can't change. We need to try to have less premature babies in the first place. Then we'll have less NEC. Or if they are now born premature, we need to be meticulous in how our cleanliness, preventing infections is the major thing. And then the transfusions and the feeding. Trying not to feed formula, give breast milk is the best. And preventative strategies. So the inherent problem stays the immaturity of the baby, and that's where the basis of this illness lies. And all the research is about everything around it. But the basic, we can't change that, except for preventing a premature baby to be born in the first place. So I think that's the reason the disease leans towards difficulty in doing anything different. Yeah, except preventative strategies. Yeah.
And just really briefly, is there like a main way in which you can prevent premature babies, or is it a very sort of random process and there are a million different factors, or is there something, a big thing that we can do to prevent it?
I think this comes with antenatal care. In certain countries, you will get, if the baby, antenatal care. I think that is a big thing. But even though the antenatal care improves, there are babies that are born that might not have been born if the antenatal care wasn't that good. It's a catch-22. So in a first world country, you will have lots of premature babies. They've got good care. So we have got more prem babies. More babies make it to live in the first place. Where in an underdeveloped country, there might be less premature babies because they abort or get a miscarriage or don't survive the initial few days of life. So it's a catch-22. The better the healthcare, the more prems.
It kind of reminds me that my first thought was it's a similar situation with the old age diseases such as Alzheimer's or those kind of diseases, that because our medical care has gotten so good, which is great because so many people live to an old age. That's a catch-22, and then because we get so many of those old age diseases. But one thing that I wanted to ask you that's been on my mind throughout the whole podcast is, what keeps you going? I mean, by all accounts, you've been an incredibly successful surgeon, researcher. Why do it? Why continue doing all those papers and working as a surgeon and doing a PhD? What is it that keeps you going?
I think my curiosity. I like to read on things, to know facts, to be knowledgeable about stuff. I take pleasure in the academics. So So, and being a surgeon, working with my hands and seeing immediate results is also good for me. And if I think I'm a surgeon, I treat a patient and I help that patient now. I make that baby by operating be better or feel better or whatever the situation may be for that one person. But with research, you can help a lot of people at the same time. Lots of people can benefit from your hard work, not just that one person that you've taken 2 or 3 hours to operate now or to manage now. You can reach a bigger crowd, a bigger amount of people that can learn from your research and they can apply it. And so you can indirectly help. So I try to feed off both ideas. And I think that keeps me going. Yeah.
Thank you. That's that was very, very powerful. And thank you for the conversation, Lisa. I really, really enjoyed it, and I got a lot out of it, and I learned a lot as well. So thank you very much for it, and thank you for the amazing work that you're doing. It really sounds like a lot of people are benefiting from it.
Thank you, Marek. It was really enjoyable. And I'm happy I said yes. I said yes for this podcast.
I'm happy you said yes as well.
If you're listening to this and thinking, I also want to publish more papers in better journals while working less, well, then we can show you a proven system to publishing 3 or more papers every single year without journal rejections. It will allow you to publish in top journals, make a real impact with your research, and become the go-to authority in your field. And I'm sharing the whole system with you for free. The link is right in the description. It's already helped hundreds of other PhD students and researchers. Jean-Paul Sebastian wrote 5 papers in 4 months. Cathy Wong published 2 papers in Q1 journals. Lisette Britz published 3 papers. 4 more are under review, and she's working on 4 more papers. And Lina Soros-Emilson got tenure. If you want similar results, if you want to publish in top Scopus Index journals, then you can get the whole Published Researcher system for free, and the link is right in the description.